Well, hey, and welcome to the Becoming Better podcast. My name's Nate, and I'm so glad you're here. On today's episode, Jason, Ken, Lyndsey, and I sit down and we discuss last Sunday's sermon. If you haven't listened to that, then I want to encourage you to stop here and give that a listen, as it will help make this conversation make more sense to you. Before we jump in, I want to invite you to a couple cool things happening around the church this week. This week, we'll have Meal Pack on Saturday at both campuses. If you're interested in packing some meals for our community and our state, you can do that this Saturday at both campuses. You can register at quadcity.church/events and click on Meal Pack and select the time you can be there. Also this week, we'll have community meal, 5 p.m. Tuesday night here at the Quad City campus in Prescott, and would love to share a meal with you and also some community. You can find more events that we're doing this month at quadcity.church/events. Well, without further ado, we hope you enjoy this conversation. How's it going, guys?
Happy Monday, everybody.
Buenas tardes.
Hello.
We got 4 people in this room and it feels packed.
And one of them is not Josh.
One of them's not Josh. No, Josh is out this week. So we got Kenny and Lyndsey joining us. And go ahead, Kenny.
I say between the two of us, Lyndsey and I, we take about as much space as Josh does. We're two small people.
Wow.
He's a big people. He's like 6'5". Have you met him?
I have. I don't know. That just felt wrong.
You're so...
You're on your own. That's all I'm saying.
He'll probably listen to this too.
Oh, he'll listen. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So
You're 30 seconds in and already getting yourself in trouble.
this is a bad idea to have me here.
Oh, man.
So yes, I'm here because Josh isn't, and Lyndsey is here. She is, for those of you who don't know, she's the wife of Corey Chatham, our kids ministry pastor here in Prescott. Lyndsey's been a part of our church since her teenage days, and if you've been around a while, you actually helped pay for Lyndsey's college. She had a scholarship from, at the time, Prescott Christian Church to go to Ozark Bible College.
Yep.
And because of all those things, except the Corey part, just happens that you're married to Corey. But because of these things, her time here, her biblical knowledge, she's part of our sermon planning team and had plenty of input into this sermon. So it seems appropriate that she be part of the podcast.
Yeah, you're welcome for that.
Yes, we are.
So, Lyndsey, how's it been, seeing this church kind of change from Prescott Christian in the student building to now?
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I started coming here as a kid. It was actually with our neighbors who, at the time, she was the worship pastor. And so before my family started coming, all that stuff, I came with them. And so being a part of the kids ministry, going through high school and then going off to college and coming back, it's crazy. I've been through all the seasons here at this church, and but I love it. I love this church.
That's awesome. Well, we're glad you're here. Glad you're getting to be a part of this. So
I feel like, did you just say we had a woman pastor here at Quad City?
That wouldn't be the first. Or maybe that one was the first. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, those are...
Who knows what they called her?
Just like burying the lead right
Director.
here. Here we are. We're
In the
The
lead.
ministry director at the time.
That's part of the conversation that we need to have, or we will have. It'll come up today, for sure.
Yeah. So I don't have anything to banter over today. I was kind of bummed. My wife has been out of town. She went to Colorado to visit some friends. So I was in a weird mood of like feeling like I had nothing to do. So all I did this weekend was clean the house.
Oh, she'll be appreciative of that.
Oh, she was so happy.
Yeah.
So she got back yesterday and she's like, "Why'd you clean so much?" And I was like, "I didn't know what to do."
I was bored.
I was like, I went golfing Friday and then came home and cleaned and texted you and then got dinner and cleaned dinner and then woke up late for church, got to church and then came home and cleaned more. So
Did you make it to church on time?
I made it on time.
You just woke up late.
I woke up late with Nate's standards of wanting to get here a little earlier. So I was like, you can't leave again because unless you want the house clean, because I'll do that.
You just showed her the trick.
Yeah.
So way to go on that one. She's leaving a lot more.
So she's going to be out of town more. So, But
well, here, let me throw this out. Okay, since we have the wonderful Lyndsey Chatham in our midst today, it is Mother's Day weekend, 5 days from now, right?
Yep.
Gotcha.
Okay, so Kenny, how do you deal with your wife on Mother's Day?
I tell her children that they better up their game. It's their mother.
So, Lyndsey, what's your expectation on Mother's Day? For all the dudes who are sitting out there that may be listening to this, what's the expectation for Mother's Day?
You're asking the wrong person because I truly do not enjoy Mother's Day.
Why is that?
It holds such a high expectation of being a mom, and you're supposed to love every moment, and it's so wonderful. And then it's a day that's supposed to show how wonderful it is. And you know what? Sometimes it's not so wonderful. So it's just a heavy expectation. But
some churches go all out, like they make a big deal about Mother's Day and preach around it and do the thing. And so you're saying that's just too much.
I think it's too much for me. It's too much for me. So
I'm going to make sure 2 of the boys come back from college this week, and I'm going to tell my daughter and the 2 boys, like, when you help your mom on Mother's Day, get all your stuff unpacked, get your room clean.
Yeah, there you go.
Take care of business. That will satisfy her. She will be pleased.
Clean the house without me having to help. That sounds great. Sounds fantastic.
There you go.
There we go.
I'm already ahead of it.
You're doing the thing.
I had the same experience this weekend. Lisa and Gianna were out for a backpacking trip for Gianna's class, and I vacuumed the house twice. I vacuumed the couch twice because we got all these dogs.
Yep.
You should get her out of the house. I do the cleaning. I planted a plant. I put more dirt in the garden. It's like getting all the things done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You guys are doing chores. Good
That's
for you.
right. Get all the little tasks done that I don't want to do.
Yeah. Jason, what'd you do this weekend?
Oh, that's
You
a great
kept
question.
working on this sermon.
For sure did do that. I didn't do a whole lot this weekend, to be honest. I feel like there was something, I don't know. What did I do?
Did you watch the race?
Which race?
Wasn't it Kentucky Derby weekend?
Oh, it was. Yeah, for sure. Turned on the race on Friday or Saturday. First Saturday in May.
Yep.
Kentucky Derby. Every week, every year.
I'm just amazed that the guy from Kentucky said, "What race?" when it's the weekend of the Kentucky Derby.
Well, I'm not there.
Yeah.
But I for sure did watch it.
Did you have a mint julep and wear a funny hat while you
I
watched
did
it?
not. But I had some of my eldest son's friends were hanging out at the house a little bit, and I got to share with them all of the idiosyncrasies of the race, of the Kentucky Derby, because they had no idea. They had no idea Kentucky Derby was a thing. And
really?
So, yeah. They did. They're Arizona kids.
Yeah.
They don't know nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be me.
Yeah. Didn't know anything about it. So I had to tell them all about how great the Kentucky Derby is. So
Interesting. Sweet. Well, let's jump in. This last Sunday, we're in 1 Timothy, end of chapter 2. So we're wrapping that up. And Ken, from PV's perspective, what did you see? What did you hear? How did your Sunday go?
Well, it was good. I got to hear the sermon at the 9:30 service because we did Discovering Quadcity at 11. And I thought you handled a topic that has lots of contention and confusion. I thought you handled it with a lot of clarity. And yeah, I would think clarity around that. I had never really made the connection to the elder piece. Like, just because you get so hung up, those, to your point about the chapter breaks, it just does, like, it changes a gear in your brain.
Yep.
You think it's just going on to another topic, and it's not. It's all one. So that really helped provide, I think, a lot of clarity around it. And this response seemed pretty positive. I didn't get any comments one way or the other after the sermon. You know, our version of Pastor's Point is at Connection Central. Everybody comes up there. So,
Yeah. What about you, Lyndsey? You got to see the writings before it got preached.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, it was, I think it's super helpful to have it broken down. The roles piece is the part that really sticks out to me. It's super helpful to take it back and remember that there is a divine design that was set in place for a reason, and that plays a part here. So getting some clarity around that. And again, like reading it in context versus let's just pick pieces out and take it for what it says is always more beneficial. So
yeah, for me, it was interesting to kind of see the context of Adam and Eve and kind of seeing, God calls men to spiritually lead through prayer and not through conflict. And that was an interesting kind of point for me to take, especially with just how we all have a role to play. And we're kind of created to be in sync with our partner, and kind of just figuring out exactly what that looks like. And I thought you did a good job in showing that. So, Jason, if I would have given you an extra 10 minutes, I gave you 5 on the 8 o'clock. But if I would have given you 10, what would you have kind of dug into a little more?
So obviously we didn't get to the end, the last verse. And I know we got a question on that. And so obviously if we continue to, if I had some more time, obviously I'd spend some time talking about that. But one of the things that I've been wrestling with over the last week, and specifically even over the last, let's just call it 24 hours, is, it's interesting how many people, both before and after this sermon, came up and said, "Oh man, that's such a hard text," and man, that's a tough one. I think I shared with you guys. Remember when we started 1 Timothy, and I gave the challenge to people, "Hey, we're going to be digging into 1 Timothy," and I just encourage you. It was when I did the sermon just on the biography of Timothy, and the challenge was, "Hey, this week I want you just to read the book of 1 Timothy. You can do the whole thing in less than 20 minutes. Just go read the whole thing." Literally that Sunday, I think I shared this on the podcast, a gentleman took me up on that, came back to the church to participate in the prayer wall, I think it was. And he says, I did it. I read through all of 1 Timothy, and I just want you to know I'm going to be praying for you when you get to chapter 2. like from the beginning, and so I've been wrestling with this. Like, why? Why is it that this has become such a, well, quote unquote, difficult passage? Like I've been wrestling with this. Like people, there were legitimate, like people feel sorry for me because I got to go preach this thing. Like I'm putting myself in danger. It's kind of that joke of, oh my goodness, he's really getting that. I'm like, how did we get here? That the scriptures, this scripture is so unnerving or offensive.
Are you asking that
Sure.
specifically to us, or just
Sure, go ahead.
introducing
Throw
the
it out
idea?
there.
Yeah.
Well, I think you posed that question in a morning meeting, and a woman on our team answered that question, and she straight out said it, women's lib. She said that. And I was like, wow, you might be right. But that's obviously a very curt answer, but the whole idea of the usurping of roles, I guess, or the challenging of roles and design.
Yeah. Because legitimately for our grandparents, this was not a new idea, a novel idea, an unnerving idea that there would be different roles for men and women, husbands and wife. It wasn't a novel, but it has become such a divisive issue. It becomes so contentious. And I'm just trying to figure out how can we get back to the place where it doesn't have to be. And I don't know what the answer to that is. Got any wisdom there, Lyndsey?
I think my first thought would be that this culture of feminism would play into it. That's a whole different conversation for another day, but I think feminism
for this day. That's
or maybe
it's for.
But it's I think
Because I had a whole section, you guys know, I read out loud as a part of our sermon plan that didn't even make the sermon.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
focusing on a little bit of this, but go ahead.
Yeah, I think where our culture has taken feminism is to a dangerous place. I'm all for women doing things and all that we're talking about in this, but we've taken it so far that it's, men are no longer needed for anything. And I think that can be very damaging within families, within our culture, within just the female life in general. So that would be my first shot at it.
And I think, so you said feminism, and I think that all for empowerment, right? I have 2 daughters.
Absolutely.
And I love women. I married one. It's important to have women feel empowered. But really what our culture has done, feminism is more about women being like men, as opposed to women being the best of a woman that you could be. And so I don't even know if it's feminism, more just a secular worldview. Let's forget the biblical worldview. Let's have a survival of the fittest Darwinian worldview, and let's just duke it out. And that would be terrible for women. If that was how the world operated, was might makes right, that would be a disaster for women. So I think maybe it's been a challenge because of that, the rise of a secular worldview in place of a biblical worldview and accepting the design of God.
Yeah. Yeah. And I face this a lot in working with pregnant women who are in crisis, and most of them have been left and abandoned by multiple men in their life, but now the father of their child. And most of them don't come in with the best idea of men. And so everything
that's earned.
Yes,
right?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Sure.
But I don't need them. I'll do everything by myself, all of these different things. So giving them a biblical worldview into, yes, you can do this. Yes, you are capable, all of those different things, but not all men are the enemy. There's a difference, and there's a separation in that. And we actually, last night we listened to the sermon together and had a good conversation about roles and what it looks like and everything. So I face this daily.
Hearing that makes me think, gosh, back to the opening text. I want all men everywhere to lift up holy hands in prayer. It's like, man, for the men, if we started with that responsibility, I'm going to be prayerful before God, then you wouldn't find these women in this situation, right? Because the men, their character would be different.
Yeah, and I think we have to, I pointed back to our grandfather's generation. My grandfather's generation, this sermon was not contentious. Everybody just understood this is how it is. And we have to understand, or at least acknowledge, that for many men in previous generations, women's value was seen below the value of men. Like that was just true. They saw women not as valuable. And so there, in that sense, it is right for us to say, oh, no. Women and men are of equal worth and value. They are of equal calling and have both been made in the image of God. It's just the roles that they have been called to are what is distinct. Right. And so me saying that our grandfather's generation, this wouldn't have been an issue. They had other issues.
Yes.
But how can we, so what I'm trying to, just trying to wrestle through, just what I've been thinking about is, so how do we just hold both of these up as true? That women really do have great worth and value and purpose in the kingdom of God. And at the same time, it is distinct and different in some ways than what God has called men to. And hold this intention, they don't have to be competing. It can be complementary.
Well, and that's I think when we hear equal, we hear same.
Yeah.
And it is, you can be equal, but different. Yeah. We have different, you said it in the text, brought it, different roles to play. And if we embraced our roles, that makes it a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I don't know. There's a whole, it's not a sermon, but that conversation continued out of this, and given an hour to chat with a group of people, I for sure would do that.
Yeah.
But I know we got it as a question. And so I want to go ahead and hit the verse 15, because this is the one I had more comments about about the fact that I left off verse 15 than I did anything that I actually said.
Yeah.
I had a handful of people come up and say, hey, what about the women in childbearing piece? We read it and I was waiting for you to cover it and we didn't. And again, rightly so, because we didn't have enough time to do that. And the second part of it is because there's not really a great answer.
Yeah.
So
All
let's
right?
read
so let's
it.
just be honest. So, all right, Kenny, go ahead and read it.
I
and
can't.
Then
I'm trying to get to my Bible and it's not opening.
I got
it.
it. So verse 15 says, but women will be saved through childbearing if they continue in faith, love, and holiness with propriety.
So this is a odd text. So Paul says, hey, women, I forbid women. They should not teach or have authority over a man, but should learn in quietness and submission. But there's that kind of connecting. But a woman will be saved through childbearing. Like, wait, what? How does this work? All right. Somebody, again, I had somebody come up, ask me about it. And I'm like, well, part of the reason I left it out is because I don't have anything good to add. Like there's, when you teach, you need to have something worth saying. And I don't have really a whole lot worth saying. But let me give you 4 common ways that people interpret this. And then I'm going to give you one that is very uncommon, but it's the one that I actually resonate with the most.
There's no shocker there.
All right. Okay. So here's the first one that has gotten spoken that any sound scholar will outright reject, but you just got to say it out loud. The first one is that women will be saved spiritually through physical childbearing. Like there is a sense in which if you give birth to a child, you will be saved. And
That sounds
just
ridiculous.
It
Nope.
is utterly ridiculous.
Nope.
Ephesians 2:8. We are saved by grace through faith. This is not of yourselves. It is not by works, so that no man can boast. Like that, it's just no. Anybody who they're on the loony train. All right. Anybody who does that they're just out. All right. Here's the second one. There are some who for a time said that what Paul's alluding to is that women will be kept safe physically during childbirth. And this actually came a little bit as a misinterpretation of the original NIV, because the NIV actually said that they will be kept safe in childbearing. And that's flatly wrong.
I could see, not knowing the word, but if they translate it saved or kept safe, I could see there's probably some word usage.
Yeah. The problem with that is we all know women, even today, die in childbirth. It is still one of the most dangerous things that a woman will do is to have babies. And so to say that a woman will be kept safe if she has faith and what's the next word? Faith and something.
Good deeds. No,
and
Love and holiness.
holiness and propriety. What you're saying is, oh, she died. That's because she didn't have enough faith. And again, we would just all rightly reject that. So both of those are out. Probably number 3, this third one here is more popular. There's still a lot of people who hold to this one. And that is that women, when it says that women will be saved through childbearing, that there's actually there's Greek people will say, or Greek scholars will say, there's actually a the in the front of childbearing, that women will be saved through the childbearing. And it is a pointer to Jesus being the Messiah, that the promise of Genesis chapter 3 was that there would be a child born forth of the woman who would crush the enemy's head, and he would strike, the enemy would strike this Messiah's heel, that actually women are saved through the coming Messiah if they come in faith and holiness and propriety. And that one, you can make a little bit of a linguistics argument for that. For me, it doesn't hold much weight, because that's the way everybody's saved. Why would you single out that that's how women are saved? That's how I'm saved.
Yes.
And so again, to put that in the bucket of that's how women specifically are saying, it just doesn't hold much water. Here's the last one, and it's a difficult leap for me to get there, but this is the consensus argument. If you pick up 5 commentaries today and you read this text in those commentaries, you're probably going to find something that points to this, that what Paul's pointing to is that women will find their ultimate fulfillment, that they'll actually be walking in God's desire for them, that if they would reject the desire to be the leaders, to dominate or to have authority, and to embrace their role as a wife and a mother, that's where they're going to find their greatest joy.
Which that might be true, but I don't know how you get there from that text.
Mm-hmm.
Same. It seems like a bit of a stretch contextually, but that is the consensus that you will read in the commentary. Mm-hmm. So part of the reason, like, I could share all of those things in a sermon.
That's the whole sermon.
And say what?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, say what? Like, there is no real consensus. There's no clarity around this. And so I can give you 4 bad options. My better option is just to say what Peter says in 2 Peter chapter 3, is that Paul writes hard stuff, things that are difficult to understand, and people twist them to mean whatever they want. Mm-hmm. That's what Peter says. Yep. As someone who is a writer of Scripture, filled with the Holy Spirit, and apostle of Christ Jesus, Peter says, when Paul writes stuff, sometimes he says stuff, and I don't even understand what he's trying to get to. And wicked people distort it to try to say what they want. Yeah. I would chalk this into one of those weird things that Paul writes and I don't really understand. Now, let me give you one. There is one other one that is not popular. Like, you won't hear this. You won't see this out there in very many places. I actually first heard this from a pastor named John Piper. John Piper is a pretty good Bible scholar. I don't always agree with everything. He's really reformed, and so we see some things differently, but I always give him credit for being a really smart guy who looks critically at the Scriptures. And he actually credits a pastor that goes back to the late 1800s is where he learned this. That's who he gives credit to. That the tipping point in this scripture is where it says that a woman will be saved through childbearing. Now, what does the word "through" mean? If I were to ask you, smart people in here, what would you say? What does it mean by "through"?
The act of?
Yeah. So we often think of "through" meaning we will be saved, a person will be saved by the means of this certain act, right? So that's kind of the way that we would initially look at this text, that a woman will be saved by the means of childbearing. And so actually that's the place where Piper and the scholar he learned this from says, actually, that's not exactly how we should think of it. And what they point to is going all the way back. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 3, where Paul uses that same language when he's talking about people in their life, in their Christian faith, in their walk, and their journey, in their good works. And he says, some of your works are going to end up as wood, and some of your works are going to end up as straw, and some of your works, they're going to get burned up at the end of the day. And you will be saved through what? Through the fire.
Through the flames, yep.
You're going to be saved through the fire. Now, you look at that and you say, does that mean we're going to be saved by the means of the fire? We say, no. The fire in that instance is actually a hindrance. It is the thing in opposition to you being saved. In fact, you're actually going to be saved in spite of the fire. All your stuff's going to get burned up and you're going to smell like smoke as you're running in. You're saved through the fire. And And Piper points out and says, let's take that same idea and bring it back. So Paul's writing both of these. Bring that idea from 1 Corinthians 3, bring it back to 1 Timothy, and begin to see childbirth not as a means of your salvation, but actually the hindrance to your salvation. In other words, go all the way back to the garden. Part of the curse, when sin entered into the world and man's role, Adam's role in preparation and providing for his family, all of a sudden it was impacted by the curse and it was going to become really difficult. He was the one that was going to have to go and dig his own food, and the weeds and the world were going to fight against him and to be able to provide for his family. It was going to be work. It was impacted by the curse, and it was going to now become very, very difficult for him. In the same way, what causes pain for the woman? Because of sin entering the world, all of a sudden, childbearing is the thing that is the curse. It is the thing that is going to be utterly painful for her. You will do this thing that you've been called to do, and it's going to be hard and difficult and painful. And so the idea here is that and again, we could talk about how deadly then that became. It's one of the most deadly things for women for their entire life is childbearing. You can go to look at the statistics. It's terrible. But what they would say, what Piper and the person he learned it from would say is that what Paul's pointing to here is that a woman is saved not by the means of childbearing, but she's going to be saved in spite of the pain of childbearing. She's going to be saved despite that the curse of sin that came upon her in childbearing would not have the final answer. She would not be under that curse forever. She would be saved even through the curse. This thing that would actually was a result of the sin into the world that is pushing back against her salvation. She will push through that and come out on the other side saved by faith and holiness and propriety. It is being saved by Jesus, by grace, through faith. That's what we're told. And the holiness piece and the propriety piece, those are just fruits of the salvation that we receive by grace. And so that's the picture that these guys would paint, is that it's not saved through, meaning by means of, but saved through, as in it will not hinder us. We are going to be saved even despite the curse that has been given because of sin into the world. Specifically in this instance, a consequence that women specifically had to endure.
That final statement right there was the clarifier, right? Despite the curse,
yes,
women will be saved, and a different curse for men, right?
Yes.
But despite the curse,
yeah. So
that has legs.
Yeah.
Right.
It is behind that more than the others.
Yeah.
It is. It's again of all the crazy ways to think through this, that one makes the most sense to me. Would I stand up and be able to say with authority, put your stamp on this one? I don't think I can.
Right.
But I do say that's the one that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Now here's what's wild. You mentioned the curse for women. I will greatly increase your pains during childbirth. So it indicates there's already there's something already. But when I think about any David Attenborough show I've seen or Wild America, like you see a mammal give birth, there's no, I can't remember a giraffe or a zebra or a bear or cats that we've had give birth and the mother is screaming in pain. I was there for when my wife was in pain. Like I wonder, there's really something to that.
Yeah.
Like, wow. I didn't notice that. I've never thought of it until then.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Was it really though?
Was
Very clarifying.
Yeah.
You just
Clears
swirled up
mud.
the mud.
Yep.
Yes.
So, Jason, one of our followers asked the question, what about also verse 12? It says authority over man, but it was being said, just as women shouldn't assume authority. Could you address this, please?
I want to give a shout out. This is a young lady
Yeah.
in our ministry. named Emma. So shout out to Emma. This is a great question. So Emma's asking the question. Okay, we get that women, specifically in this context, it seems as if Paul's making it clear that women should not serve as the role of elders. They should not have authority over men. We get that piece. And I think what Emma's asking is, the language in this text says a woman is not to assume authority over a man. And what she's asking is, does that word assume authority, does that change anything on how we should view this text? And I just need you to know, Emma, that's such a great question. And it's a question that lots of people have asked, and it has influenced the way that they've seen this text. So there are some who would look at this text and say, because it uses the word assumed, that a woman might be granted or given authority over men, say by an eldership. Like that a woman that there's an eldership in a church that would look at a woman and say, hey, you under the eldership of the authority are now granted the authority over, I don't know, a Sunday school class or in a teaching, preaching role, or even as a part of an eldership. Like that they would say that she can't ask for it on her own, or she should not pursue it on her own. But if it is given to her, if someone offers it, or it is she's promoted in such a way that the elders of the church would see her as deserving of this, does that change how we look at this text? So I just want you to know, Emma, what you're asking is very perceptive. And there's a lot of great pastors and leaders who actually would lean in that direction and say, yes, that does change it. And it should, that women should be able to lead when there is a governing body that gives them the permission to do so. I would not fit into that camp where I am today. And part of it, and we'll talk about this in just a moment as we kind of answer another question that pops up, but if we look at the role of an elder in the church, in this text, there's two specific pieces to that role. There's the teaching piece and there's the authority piece. And it says a woman should not assume authority or have authority over a man. So those are two distinct actions that are a part of one role. Okay. I struggle with where I am today. I struggle with saying that you could functionally act in one of these. We just won't use the title, and that makes it okay. That the eldership would say to a woman, you could functionally act as an elder. We just won't give you the role, but you have the authority to do that. It seems counterintuitive to me to say that that men would give authority to a woman, and that would fit under the biblical expectation that a woman not have authority over a man. As long as the men give the woman authority, she can have authority over men. That doesn't seem to track with me. Again, I know that I have some great friends. I have a buddy of mine who is a pastor at a church less than 100 miles from here. I connect with him on a regular basis. He and I disagree. He has women elder in his church, and he would say this. He would say that it's not a woman who is domineering or trying to seek authority, but the elders have chosen to bring her on in that role. And again, it just seems counterintuitive to me to say it's okay for a woman to lead men as long as men can tell the woman she can lead men. And so it just seems counterintuitive to what the scripture teaches. So to answer your question, Emma, it's a great question. There are people who see that. I just think that the prohibition still stands, even if men tell you it's okay.
So I got two things out of that. And hearing what you said, I'm trying to ask for a clarifying question, but it might make it muddy. Are you taking the position here, the view that the teaching role, it comes with it authority.
It for sure does. There is no teaching without authority.
And meaning like authority, I don't know, over the people, I might not even be right, but I guess you're bringing the authority of Scripture.
Yeah. I have a hard time distinguishing. If it's unauthoritative teaching, why would I even listen to it? What's the point? Now, we can talk about formal and informal, and we'll do that in just a moment.
Okay.
But I think all teaching, by its nature, has authority in it.
There, yes, I would, because we're using an authoritative text for sure. Yes. And then I think in our process, in our sermon prep process, we have 2 women in there that were invited, right? You asked them to come.
Yeah.
And I think your message had so much more clarity, really, because Lyndsey, really, because she was the one who like, look, this part, I get where you're going, but this doesn't, because we have the dialogue that doesn't happen on Sunday.
Right.
So she's
again,
invited
give
into
a
the
little
process.
bit of context for people who may not understand kind of our process.
Okay, so there's 8 of us on the sermon prep team. One person is responsible for writing it, but we're all responsible for reading the text and bringing our ideas to the table. So you get roughly 8 more hours of prep work that one person's not doing. Obviously, Jason preached it. So he writes the message. We bring our ideas before, we bring our input to the text. The speaker, Jason, prepares the message, and then we review the message for clarity, time. Does something need to be added? Something need to be cut? And in this case, on that last section where Jason really got into the idea of how the role of elder, lead pastor, a woman speaking, and the whole idea of a created order. And the verbiage that Jason in his explanation just wasn't clear. We understood what we want because it's a dialogue, but coming from the microphone and the stage, it's not a Q&A. So Lyndsey was she like really kind of drove that. Like she put in all the input, and then in our lead team meeting, we talked about it, and we kept going back to Lyndsey's critique. I wouldn't say criticism, but a critique. Like, she's right. Like, this, we get it because we're doing this, but it's not going to be communicated clearly. And I think that point being, you've invited her into that circle, and I don't see an authority there, but she is offering her input, which I think it was great. Obviously, everybody benefited from it. So I don't know. I could see it both ways from the
Lyndsey,
example
any
you're
thoughts?
making.
I mean, as you said, like, I will go through it. I will see what I notice from my life, from my perspectives, from my work, all of that those kinds of things, and then bring it to you, knowing that these are my thoughts. This is my experience. This is what I'm hearing from you. And that's it. It's your responsibility from that point to take it and determine whether or not that produces a change or an edit or an as is. And I think that's all of us. It doesn't matter whether it's Ken or I giving a critique or anything. So, I think it's great to have all the different perspectives and everything within it. But even in that, I am submitting under your authority, knowing that you are the one preaching and teaching it. Yeah. And I'm not showing up on a Sunday going, well, he didn't listen to me. And so I'm not going to pay attention to this message anymore because so.
I think it's really helpful, again, back to the point of, you've heard me preach hundreds of times.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hundreds.
Thousands, probably.
No, not that. Probably not.
But you talk a lot.
For sure.
50 Sundays a year, call it.
For sure, hundreds of times. And there's so much value because, again, I think you have an understanding of kind of where I land and where I'm coming from. And you can call out, I get what you're thinking. You're not saying it in the way that you want to say it. So that is so helpful. Mm-hmm. And again, there is this great value in different perspectives, and having a couple of women in the room as a part of those conversations is such a blessing. It's such a blessing. So huge help.
Might help too that you and Lyndsey are like the same person. Just one has double X and one's got XY chromosome.
Yeah.
Well, that's hurtful. So I feel that.
You're offended.
Corey doesn't agree. Corey doesn't agree with that.
Yeah. But so this is kind of off topic, but I think our listeners would love to kind of see or hear your answer, Jason. Obviously, this isn't something a lot of churches do, of having a team of other individuals speaking into what we say on the podium. But how has that kind of benefited or made difficult for you as you have continued on writing these sermons? Like what are some of the things that pop out to you as you've done this for?
Oh, there's a lot of benefit. Does it make it difficult? Yeah, but only in a good way. Meaning in the same way that going to the gym is difficult, right? You go to the gym. I've heard.
I was going to say,
wait.
I was going to say, how do you know that that's true?
We went once together.
I don't actually go to the gym because they're scary places, and I get stuck inside of the gym and show up late for church. But Kenny, you'd know that reference if you listen to the podcast more recently. But in the same way that doing the difficult part of any kind of work makes you better at it. That's what happens in the sermon planning. So again, what is invaluable is when I'm writing something and it can become so clear in my head, like it makes perfect sense to me because I easily fill in the gaps from one point to the next. When I submit that to a group of people who aren't in my head, it gives
Praise
them
the
the
Lord.
opportunity to connect the dot, and where it doesn't connect or where it is unclear, or frankly, sometimes where it is offensive, where I say something that I shouldn't say, or I say it in a tone that is unhelpful. Like this is the group of people who are able to kind of put a red flag up there and say, hey, you ought to rethink this. There's got to be a better way to say this. If you're going to say that, you have to include this thought over here because it doesn't make sense for it to stand by. So having those different perspectives to help connect the dots. The other thing is, one of the things that I do a lot when I preach is I try to make a bunch of different examples a lot of times to try to make a point. Like for this last weekend, it was all the dumb things that dudes argue about. And I just create a list of them. And I threw one at the 11 for you. Did you catch it?
Yeah, I did.
Do you want to tell our readers,
No,
our listeners?
No.
I threw in one for him.
Just throw you under the bus twice
I'm
now.
going to. About are F1 drivers even real athletes? So for those who don't know,
As I was home, I watched the race and I was like, yes, they are.
Nate is a big F1 racing fan, and as a redneck, it's NASCAR or nothing. So anyway, so I come up with these lists, and many times whenever I'm doing these things, I'll have to ask Lyndsey and Amy, how does this, here's the big idea, how does this get applied to a woman's life? Like what are the things, what are the challenges that a woman would deal with in this circumstance? What are the sins that a woman is tempted with in this area? Like it gives me a perspective to be able to add some examples that would hit for a mom or a daughter or a wife or just a woman. Like they have perspective in those that I never will. And so having the ability to tap into that is so great. So all of that to say, it is mostly blessing. Yeah. And there are times where it gets loud. And we will fuss argue and theologically punch each other for a while as we're trying to work it out. And again, that brings clarity. When I hear somebody argue for something that I took for granted, then it makes me have to go back and say, okay, there are people, it's not just in our church, in this room, who don't see this the way that I do. So how can, number one, am I reading it right?
Yeah.
Is my theology sound? And then how do I communicate it in a way that is persuasive without being offensive to somebody who sees it different? And so that's the difficulty. And I'm trying to say, how do I say this without? Okay, so for this weekend, I made a pretty big edit between Friday and Sunday. And I don't typically do that, but we all knew this text was going to be a little more emotional People are coming in. There are a lot more landmines around this text. So I spent extra time on that this weekend. And what changed for me between Friday and Sunday, more than anything else, I think it was twofold. One was tone. It won't be surprising to those in this room, but they're for those of you who may be new to the church, sometimes, just sometimes, I can come into a sermon and preach it looking for a fight.
You're not getting an argument over here.
No one's arguing.
I can sometimes come in looking for a fight. Like I'm just ready to put everybody in their place and show them why I'm right. Like there's that in me. And as I went back, there was a bit of that in the message.
You meaning when you went back and reviewed it?
Yes.
Okay.
There was a bit of that I'm like, why I'm coming in defensive, and I don't need to be. And again, this is what helped me was to realize this isn't new. We've preached this before. Like we've talked about these issues. This is not a new thing. And so how do I just share what we have always taught and the way that we've always acted as a church without trying to feel like I need to punch people into submission? And so I think the biggest thing that changed was just the tone, just to say, hey, this is where we are. We are a complementarian church. This is the way that we view it. And it's the way we view it. It helps us to understand families and marriages and the roles of husbands and wives. And that just plays over into the way that God's designed his church. And so it became, my hope is it became a lot less contentious. And hey, this is just the way that we see it. We know other people see it differently, and we're not trying to bash anybody. We love people who see this differently. And so that was a big shift, I think. And it allowed for a lot more clarity just to bring that tone. And that, again, that comes out of these conversations that we have with one another in my living room.
I like what you even said in that room, there are people who see it differently. And it was so great. I wish the whole church heard this podcast. On our own team, we have people who look at scripture and come to different conclusions.
Yep.
And we see certain things differently and believe certain things differently, yet we still work together to advance the kingdom.
Yeah.
And it'd be great if we could just do that across the board in all the faith. But so many, we'll die on every hill sometimes. It's just not worth that kind of fight.
Yeah. I think this whole process is the perfect example of all four of our core values at play. I mean, it's the staff and myself doing that work with scripture, and so I'm super grateful for it, to be a part of it. But also, just even if I weren't a part of it, I'm grateful that the staff values that having this conversation. So
good. All right, ready for the next question?
Yep, let's hit it.
We've been at this.
Molly submitted this. She said, Jason talked about women can and will serve in any ministry in the church except for one, the role as an elder. Please clarify the teaching aspect. Is it also Quadcity's belief that women cannot teach the weekly sermon? I understand that women can teach in all other roles, but is the Sunday sermon teaching also an exception?
And go ahead and read the parenthetical note that she gives us there.
And then she says at the end, I'm not judging on this. I just need clarification on this, as we have had at least one woman teach a sermon in the past, but she is no longer allowed to do this. Please expand on this.
Yeah.
Again, and there's a question mark at the end of that. She's no longer allowed to do this question. Like, I think she's asking, but she's not allowed.
Yeah. So great question, Molly. It is so, really helpful. And actually, we knew this question was coming. So again, we had a bit of a lead team retreat this past week. We spent several hours this past week together, and this came up. And so we as a lead team, which is, there's 6 of us on our staff who kind of fit into that leadership team. And we were doing a bit of an offsite and talked through this very issue. And so we knew it was coming. Again, didn't have time to give it all the weight that it needed in the sermon. So this is where I just want to first admit that I've shifted a bit on this over the last 6 to 8 years. Molly has been around for a while. Like, she's old like me. And so she's been
no,
around.
she is not old like you. She might be about the same age, but she ain't old like
No,
you.
that's for sure right. She
knows what the inside of the gym looks like. That's right.
Sure. Molly will, for those of you who don't know, Molly serves on our tech team. And so when she hears me preach, she often hears 3 times.
Yep.
So she'll serve. She's amazing on our tech team, one of our most beloved volunteers back in the tech booth. And she does a lot of the sermon stuff, sermon slides on our Sunday mornings. And when I'm standing up at the top greeting people as they're coming in from the parking lot, Molly will be doing laps around the church between services. So I'm sitting up there greeting people, and she ain't sitting back there drinking a latte.
Nope.
No. She's walking laps up and around the hills of the church. So you are 100% correct. She's not old like me. I'm way older biologically than Molly is, for sure. But Molly's been around a while, and there was a time where we had a lady who did preach a few times here at Quadcity. And my wife, even if we go back 15 years, my wife actually shared a couple of messages here at Quadcity. So yes, Molly, you are right. There was a season where it was more normal. I would say, that we, the fact that the person you're alluding to doesn't preach anymore was not necessary. It wasn't specifically because it was a female, and that was why she's not teaching anymore.
Did you say it was or wasn't?
Wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't. That decision was not made because she was a female that she should no longer be teaching. That's not how that went. In the same way that there were other people at that time who would help preach at times that we wouldn't ask them at this point. It was about fit. Kind of the culture of our church did not fit the style of teaching that this person was bringing. And so it was a cultural fit. And again, there were other teachers who have taught at our church that we probably wouldn't ask at this point. Again, just as our culture has changed and the emphasis that we put on our Sunday morning teaching, there are some expectations that we have, and not everybody is a cultural fit. And so so at the time, it didn't have anything to do with whether it was male or female. But with that being said, I shared with our lead team this week, as I have grown and as I've kind of walked through this journey I was 31 years old when I started as the lead pastor here, and I realized 30-year-olds don't know much. Like, they're not that smart. Sorry, Nate.
No, we're not.
You're not sorry. Who are you kidding?
And I was just trying to figure out what does it look like and and so a lot of this stuff, we're always growing and maturing, and which is actually a good thing, right? We want to grow and mature in our faith and in our beliefs and in our understanding. In fact, Paul's going to address that with Timothy and say, hey, people should see your growth in the faith. Like, they should see that. And so when people say, oh man, you're much better at teaching than you were 5 years ago, instead of getting offended like I used to, what, you thought I stunk back then? I actually take it as a compliment. Yeah. Like, you should see our growth. That is something. And so as I've wrestled with this, I have moved more conservative in this than I used to be. And so for me, I've just shifted, and as specifically for our church, the weight of our Sunday morning teaching is the most important thing that we do. It has the largest audience. It carries the greatest gravity, and it will be on the interwebs forever. Like 15 years ago, I stand up and preach, and it didn't make it out the door, right? Nobody remembered it.
It was on Vimeo.
No. At that point, when I first started, we weren't even doing that.
Okay.
Like, that didn't
CD
come till
recordings.
That's right.
That's what we were doing.
We were doing CD recordings, and nobody was buying those CDs. Like, you can't find them now. So the gravity of those teachings, the weight of them, it wasn't as much. But as the church has grown bigger, and as our influence in the community has gotten larger, and as the technology has changed, the reach of those teaching has gone further. it really has made me have to step back and think about, okay, we just need to make sure that we have the right voices saying the right things at the right time and the right tone. Like the weight of it feels so much more than it used to. And so I've actually become more conservative in this way. And I just need to say, this is not something that our eldership has made any decision on as far as should women teach on a Sunday morning. We've not had that conversation as an eldership to decide one way or another. Women shall not, or they could. We haven't even had the conversation at this point in order to make a decision about that. But I will say this, again, Molly alluded to it, that we believe, and I said it on Sunday, that every role in the church, women should be serving in. And I think that includes the teaching role. Like, there are two passages. Colossians 3:16. Again, this just affirms kind of why we say that. So Colossians 3:16 says, "Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, since as members of one body you were called to peace, and be thankful. Let the message of Christ dwell in you richly as you teach and admonish one another with all wisdom, through psalms, hymns, and songs from the Spirit, singing to God with gratitudes in your heart." Like, we would take that passage and apply it to everyone. Everyone should let the message of Christ dwell in you richly as you teach and admonish one another. Now, what we would say is, this seems to be pointing to a less formalized type of teaching. Teach and admonish one another, encourage each other. That's what he's calling us to. There's another one in 1 Corinthians chapter 14, where he says kind of the same thing. 1 Corinthians 14:26, Paul writes, "What then shall we say, brothers and sisters? When you come together, each of you as a hymn or a word of instruction or revelation or a tongue or interpretation, everything must be done in the church so that it can be built up." So again, he has this expectation that everyone, brothers and sisters, may have a word of instruction, a revelation, a tongue, or again, these seem to be more informal, spur of the moment kinds of words of knowledge. Men and women should be doing this on a regular basis. But when we get to 1 Timothy 2, what he's describing here seems to be a more formal type of teaching. And again, connected to the role of the eldership. In many churches, I was thinking about this as I was walking down into our podcast room here. In many churches, the Sunday morning experience, the Sunday morning sermon, in many churches is not deemed to be the formal discipleship teaching time. It is the wide end of the funnel that is an opportunity to come and hear an encouraging message. The Willow Creek is the one that keeps popping in my head. Back in the early 2000s, Willow Creek would say their weekend experience was for the seekers.
You're talking
right?
the Bill Hybels Willow Creek.
Bill Hybels Willow Creek, not the road that runs north-south through Prescott. Willow Creek is a church that was a huge influence on American Christianity in the 90s and the 2000s of how church was done. And the Willow Creek model with Bill Hybels was that your Sunday was just a big open door, and it was for the seekers. It was not for your deep teaching. It was not for theological education. It was for an encouragement and a way to help introduce people to the gospel, but it was not weighted down with any theological or doctrinal formalities. Like, if you wanted that kind of what we would call meaty teaching, you came to the Wednesday night. Wednesday night was where they served their communion, and that's where you're going to get the meaty teaching. And that was their model. That is not who we are. For us, our Sunday gathering is our meaty teaching. It is where we're going to get doctrinal and deep theological, which is why we even have these questions on here today. Like, this is why Molly's asking the questions, because we introduce these topics on a Sunday morning in an environment for everybody to learn. Like, that's what we do. And so, again, I would look and say what we are doing on a Sunday morning fits way closer to the expectation of the formal authoritative teaching that Paul assigns to men, a small group of men in the church. That's who he assigns that kind of teaching to. Again, there's an informal teaching that we all should be doing with and for one another all the time, men and women, all of us. But the weighty, deep theological teaching that comes with this doctrinal kind of weight to it, that's setting the direction of the church and bringing challenge to our people, that's what we do on Sunday morning. And that's why we can't just let anybody go up there and do that. We recognize there's a small group, and we would say small group of godly men who have been vetted that need to be doing that kind of teaching. So would we ever have a woman speaker on a Sunday morning, Molly? I'm not sure. It is not something that I think is sinful. There are great churches, great Bible teachers that I know who have women teachers on their staff, and I think we can learn from them. I have sat under many of their teaching. We just went to a conference in the fall where I've got a friend that I've known since she was a young girl. I was in high school. She was in my church, and her dad was our pastor, and she now is teaching on a regular basis at a church in California and does an amazing job. And when I'm sitting listening to her teach the Bible, she does a great job. And so we just heard her at a conference 5 months
November,
ago. Yeah, something like that. Did an amazing job. And so would we ever have somebody like that at our church? Maybe. Again, we haven't categorically decided one way or another as a church, as an eldership of what that would look like. But I just think it's important to note that what we do on a Sunday morning is that type of formal, deep, doctrinal teaching that seems to me to be the kind that, no, this is, men should be doing this, carrying this weight and setting these messages before the people of God.
That's a thorough answer.
Yeah, I don't know if it helps. But
She's going to have to keep rewinding and listening to that again.
Yeah.
And especially because you've mentioned at the end of your sermon of, the teachers have so much more weight. And I think with that lens, for sure, being critical on who we have up there is a big role of it, and not an easy decision. So,
yeah.
You know what we haven't done, and we've been at this for this has been a little while. We we didn't even touch the men to pray, and
because nobody has any questions about
nobody
that.
cares about
You should.
right? This is the
irony.
one.
You should pray.
We should pray. That's it.
There
There's
you go.
no question.
Pray for
There we
Jason.
go.
Here's the thing that I said to, I don't even know who I said it to. The more what's the word I'm looking for? The more surprising element of the sermon from Sunday was that I did a whole 5 minutes on women's modesty and nobody said anything about it.
Yes.
I used the word cleavage in a sermon and nobody said anything. Like that was less emotionally driven than even you get to the women's role. Like all of that stuff just went away. Nobody had any gripe about that.
Yeah, that's true.
Here's this old guy up there talking about what modesty should look like on women. Like any other Sunday, that's the headline. That's the issue. Like we're going to get angry about that one, but that didn't, I don't know. Maybe you can speak into that one, Lyndsey. What do you think? Why did nobody yell at me about the modesty conversation?
Probably because you didn't connect it to doing it for the purpose of men. That's why.
Oh, there you go. That it wasn't
that would
a
be
matter of,
my.
okay.
It has nothing.
You're causing all the men to stumble, so you shouldn't do
That's
this.
right. That's right. There you go.
Got it.
There you go. So.
Yeah, no, it wasn't that. It was Paul was pointing to God, not to men. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
Sweet. Any other landmines you want to
Step on.
step on?
Oh,
before we end this?
I think we've
Yeah.
sufficiently done that today.
Yeah.
Let me give you I will give you one landmine. I will step in it a little bit. One of the things we were talking about earlier was was feminism and the impact of it in how we view this whole conversation. And I think it is so true. I just want to say outright, we have some amazing young women, and we just threw out a few names of them right before we came on this podcast.
Mhm.
We have some amazing young women in our church that I want to see going into ministry.
Yeah.
Like, we need them in the ministry. We need them using their gifts and leveraging their lives for the kingdom of God. Like, oh my heavens. I even spoke to a couple of them, when we did the whole Timothy story. I went up to them and said, you could be a Timothy. Like, I want to make sure that you know that you can do this. You can go out and be a part of the kingdom and do amazing things. And so when we make that list at the end of I want all of our young men and our young women to see themselves in it.
Mm.
So why is it so difficult? Why is it that we just think so differently about this whole topic than we did 50 years ago? And again, I threw some lines into a notebook that I carry around with me. It's always in my I got a brown leather bag. My son Eli calls it my Indiana Jones bag.
Suitable.
I think it's a purse, but it's
A man purse.
he's got his merce.
That what's changed, even from the beginning of kind of the liberation, the women's lib kind of movement, is we went from telling women that you don't need a man to find your value. That's the way we began. You don't need a man to find your value, to just saying you don't need a man.
Mm-hmm.
We've went from telling young women you can be anything you want to now we tell young women you must be everything you need.
Yep.
Like, you have to now be your own provider and your own protector and your own whatever. You have to be all you can't need a man. You have to be everything that you need. You got to care for yourself. We went from telling young women you are equal to men. And today you go on social media and what you'll hear is young women are being told men are beneath you. Again, it went from, hey, you're equal, to now we tell young women no man is equal to you. All men are beneath you. We've went from telling young women you can be a leader to now telling young women to reject being led.
Yep.
Like, you don't let any man try to lead you in any circumstance. You are to be your own leader at all times. We've went from telling young women you have a voice worth hearing to young women being told now your voice is the only one worth hearing. And so we've just shifted this over and over the last 25, 30 years. Again, we all know that masculinity is considered toxic at this point. Femininity has been rewarded, especially in every educational institution from preschool to college. Femininity is rewarded. We want all the young boys, they get the blessings if they act like the young women. Like, if they can just sit down and color, then they get moved forward. They get you get the blessing. You get moved forward by acting in like a woman does. And so, again, I think this is why things have shifted so much in the last 25, 30 years. And I think it's shifted in a very, very unhealthy way. And so if there's any way for us to get back to the place where we can just say, no, men, women, perfectly equal in their value and worth, and have both been made in the image of God, but they've been given different roles to play, and we are all better off if we live in the God ordained roles that He's called us to.
It's a mic drop.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right there.
So awesome. Well, that's where we're going to leave it. And we hope you guys have a good week.
And any follow-up emails, Ken M at quadcity.church.
He'll get to you. So have a good week. We'll see you guys later.
Bye now.